something's happening in the background. Perfect. Cool. Just wait for Nick to come back on.
Zara, I hope you can hear me clearly. I had to unmute on the
Yeah,
system.
perfect. I can hear and see you.
Right, and also give me a thumbs up as I share my slides and just let me know that you can see those clearly, as I will do that now. But can I just say to Zara and also to Andrew, it's a huge pleasure to participate in today's session. I hope we'll have many other sessions from my colleagues as well at the RCA, and I hope I might be invited back at some point too. Just to say as well, I've been at the Royal College of Art. It seems like almost forever because I was a student there, but spent more than 30 years initially as an industrial designer working for IBM in the days when it was as big as Apple and Google put together. It's still a substantial company, but not at the scale of the Apple and Googles of today. But it was a fascinating career. But after 30 years of it, I decided that it was time to learn something new. And my focus moved to service design. And that is the department I set up at the Royal College of Art. I did a PhD, I got back into academia, did a few other jobs, but service design was an absolute passion. And the reason being was this. I had felt that over the 30 years that I had practiced design and moved up through the executive team at IBM, I had learned a huge amount about services and realized that time after time after time, every project we ever worked on that delivered services, people were disappointed. And that's nothing to say that there was something wrong with what IBM was doing, but it's what an industry is doing. You cannot expect IT consultants and management consultants to have the empathy and the understanding that has made the products that we design today. You know, you pick up your Apple phone, you pick up your MacBook, any other device. In terms of stuff, design has kind of won the game. If you aren't designing beautiful stuff, fabulous stuff, easy to use stuff, nobody will use it. But somehow with services, we got away with it for too long. And really, the experience of most services absolutely sucks. And that's been the problem. You can have a beautiful vacuum cleaner, which sucks brilliantly. But when it comes to designing a service, what went wrong? So I created the service design department with a real passion for moving into public services because we saw that that was where there was substantial need, not just for getting great services for banks and retailers, insurance companies, car companies, and also because there was a kind of shift and servitization of all kinds of products that were taking place. Let me just also preface what I'm going to show you in my slides with the following. The last 3 years, since I stepped down from leading the service design department, I've got involved in a couple of major efforts. One with the then Prince of Wales, who founded the Terra Carta Design Lab, and I am leading the academic side of that. I'm going to show you some of that work that comes out of that. And the second is Design for Good, where we work with the United Nations and about 14 global corporations to be able to look at how we can create solutions that address the Sustainable Development Goals. I've also worked with my colleague Nicholas Rebolledo, who's been working very closely with Andrew as well, in terms of being able to look at how we can apply this work, this approach to design, not just to creating public services, but to creating policy. And I'm going to close my presentation today referring to that. At the very heart of this is a model that I'm going to describe to you called values-driven innovation. And the reason I focus on values for this is that people talk very much about being mission-led, and that should be what we are trying to achieve. It's exactly what we're doing with Terra Carta. The mission is how can we address the challenges our planet faces and create solutions to those that are in harmony with people, planet, and nature. With Design for Good, how can we address the Sustainable Development Goals without creating new sets of challenges that emerge from it? Missions are important, but it is your values that inform the missions you select and how you're going to address them. And that's the topic I'll be talking about today. So I'm going to hopefully succeed in sharing my slides to be able to do that. I'm hoping those are coming up now. Please tell me, Zara, by
Yeah,
whatever mechanism you can, if
we've
they
got
have.
that.
They're up.
Okay.
Great. All right, brilliant. So I'm going to run through a little bit about the rationale. I'll talk a little bit about some of the principles, and then putting it into practice. I'm going to address first the Terra Carta, then I'm going to talk about the work we've done with Design for Good, and then I'm going to turn to applying this in government for policy, design, and public service innovation. And then we'll have time at the end for a Q&A. So, mission-led, but values-driven. Um, the point I want to make from here is that, you know, I've spent nearly 50 years in the workplace after finishing all my education and everything else. As someone who's a little bit older, life suddenly becomes finite. All of you who are starting out in your career, it seems infinite. But we are living in a time where there is no time to waste. And this is something personally I feel very strongly. We have to use the power of design, not just by designers, but to make an impact, to make a difference. We are living in times that may well get a little bit darker. And you can choose to feel a kind of sense of victimhood. And I'm going to say to you, if you're in the roles that you're in, and these are very privileged roles, I want you to consider about how you can be the remedy. This expression came when I was driving my car, and I almost kind of I had to pull off the road because I was reflecting on it. I thought it must have been said by Lem Sisse or some other poet, but it wasn't. I can't track down who said the following words, which are, I will not be defined as a victim of circumstance. I do not accept that. I am the remedy. Now, whoever said that, my goodness, that has been to me an inspiration. And if we want to be the remedy, we have to also recognize at this moment there is a perfect storm of new technologies. This kind of degree of innovation, and again, I started out my career at a big IT company in the 1970s. And things we thought that was an amazing moment. But actually, about every 60 years, there seems to be an economists argue about why that is the case, but what is known as Kondratiev waves of innovation. And we're in one right now. And you can go back to the 1960s, you can go back to around 1900, you can go back to the 1840s, the 1760s, 1780s, and you'll see similar combinations of new technologies emerging almost all at one time, almost indigestible by the existing communities of companies and of society. Almost indigestible, but of course they've been digested, but creating kind of revolution that is also a social revolution that takes place. This perfect storm of technological innovation is also meeting a perfect storm of grand challenges. And those grand challenges you know well. But the challenge that we face is time. I kind of checked in again. If you take 225 working days to each year, and there are 6,000 dots on this page, there are only 5,420 to the year 2050. Now, some of you will be thinking, by the year 2050, I will be at the climax of my career. I'll be at the zenith of it. Others of you may be thinking, I've still got some time to go by then. What I want to point out to you, as you can see every dot clearly on this, you can see this week. You can see the rest of this year and the time to Christmas in that top line. You can see next year in the first few lines of it. This is a very, very finite amount of time. If you look at what you're able to achieve in any given day, do not waste a single day, because each day that we delay, we become part of the problem and we have less time to be part of the remedy. Now, let me turn to mission-led, values-driven. What do I mean? Mission-led is about taking design-led innovation models and approaches, applying it for very clear purpose to be mission-led. But mission-led is driven by values, not only value creation. It has to be evidence-based. It is interdisciplinary from the very, very outset in terms of what you do. It has to be collaborative, designing with communities, not just for communities. And it is that co-creation capacity which is so essential in how you work. Um, as innovators and as policymakers, I know that the Treasury is always in your mind about how much resources we've got. But we can't look at an innovation that is associated with creating a more sustainable societal or environmental endeavor without thinking about the economic sustainability in real time, concurrently with that. Technology is available, and we can get, I'm sure, all of your ministers, your heads of department are all urging you to use AI for something. Do not be driven by tech. Harness its power in order to be able to deliver the missions and ensure that that tech is also going to align with the values that you are trying to protect. And also, when we're talking about this, think about the full array of policy instruments, because it isn't, the answer is not a public service. If you go to an architect and tell them there is a challenge of public health, they might design you a stadium, a gymnasium, a sports center, because they design buildings. If you ask a service designer, they'll design you a service. But sometimes it's not the service itself. It's so many other elements, and there are many more policy instruments than just public services to be able to deliver. Now, let me just talk about this incredible endeavor, which I'm so flattered to be part of. It was conceived by the King and Sir Jony Ive, and it was to create a laboratory to come up with smart ideas from unusual places to feed into what has become known as the Sustainable Markets Initiative. This is 250 CEOs who meet with His Majesty twice a year as part of the Sustainable Markets Initiative, all companies that have signed up for this Magna Carta for the Earth called the Terra Carta. And it is about creating innovations in harmony with people, planet, and nature, because there simply will not be markets to be the leader of if we do not address these challenges as part of that. And the Design Lab sits right at its very heart, encouraging designers, innovators, young people to come forward with ideas. And I'm going to show you a few of those and show you how they bring together many of those different elements. So in 2022, we were able to announce 5 winners of this who have subsequently gone on to raise over 85 million in investment. And if you go to Wimbledon, you go to a football match, you will have experienced Notpla. It is a it is a plastic that's made from seaweed. It was also the winner of the Earth Shot, and all the food is being served in not single-use plastic or paper containers covered with single-use plastic that doesn't decompose, but is being lined with this seaweed-made material. Shellworks is packaging cosmetics today because it's made from a polymer made from bacteria. Electric cars deposit tire dust, and huge amounts of it. They wear through their tires in no time at all and break dust. And Tire Collective is being able to mop up all of that dust and make sure these are truly zero emissions. And when it comes to cows, there are 1.6 billion on the planet that belch as much methane that is the equivalent of the greenhouse gases from all the civil aviation that's in the skies. Capture that methane. This company's raised more than 30 million. There are tens of thousands of cattle who are now already having their methane collected and being able to be turned into CO2, which is 84 times less toxic. So, changing the skies, changing the roads, changing the plastics, changing our food and what we wear. This year, we had 10 new winners. You can see 8 of them here, and 2 of them came from the Royal College of Art as we went global with the Terra Carta Design Lab. And I'm just going to focus on a few of these. And it underlines the point of missions. I'm just going to mention on this one, Ponder. Ponder is a lining for jackets. So if you have a puffer jacket that's got polyester and Dacron coatings inside it and all that fluff, it makes a terrible mess. You can't recycle any of that. This is using biomaterials. But why is it so relevant to this message about values driven? We all want to use natural materials, and we all want to get away from fossil fuels, but just bear with me as I explain how the following is in place. Wetlands are the challenge because they sequester more carbon than all of the rainforests on the planet. In terms of biodiversity, they have 50% of the world's biodiversity, yet farmers are draining those to plant a little more barley, a little more wheat, a little bit more of the rapeseed. Now, you can't do that and tell them to keep their wetlands unless you can give them an economic outcome to focus on. What Ponder is able to do is turn those wetlands all over the world into centers which can create a new crop, which is bulrushes. And those bulrushes can be extracted, and this down that can be filled your Montclair jacket, your Stella McCartney jacket, your jacket from Uniqlo, wherever you get it to stay warm in winter, and provide carbon sequestration and biodiversity credits and carbon credits so that the farmers can turn that economic drain, but instead of draining a wetland, they can now create economic output from it. That's just one of the solutions that I'm describing here. And you can see how they are attacking with blue nose. It's something that appears on the front of ships to act as a fairing. Pulpatronics, replacing carbon and metals and plastics that go into RFID tags with just paper tags that can be printed with a laser and act as a printed circuit. And so we have a range of different solutions which are now literally entering the markets and changing them. The 250 CEOs, and you can see me here with the King and with the students and the graduates from the Royal College of Art, they were presented to His Majesty, but also 250 companies who are the people who are investing and taking up these solutions. So this is being on a mission and creating a governance model and a program that allows innovations that start in institutions like the Royal College of Art, like Rhode Island School of Design, like National Institute of Design in India, that now includes from Africa to China, different institutions helping create new solutions for industry. The two winners from the UK, again, are combining fantastic thinking around business models with technological models, with societal models. Blue Nose is the fairing that you see that's on the front of that container ship. 80% of world trade is on 5,000 containers, and world trade depends on shipping. This fairing that goes on the front of the ship will provide payback in less than 2 years from the 5% fuel saving and the amount of carbon that is saved as a consequence of that. Forest fires represent 20% of greenhouse gas emissions, and they're going to increase by 50% before the end of this century, current course and speed. How can you detect those forest fires at a low cost level and intervene? PIRI is the solution for that. Who is the customer for PIRI, though? Is it governments who want to protect it? It's the insurance companies. And this is where you start to find, how do you organize your business model? Who is the customer? And to put that business and commercial thinking alongside through the analysis of the system with your creative and technological thinking that's part of it. So again, interesting and profound winners that are making an impact in that. Let me turn now to design for good. All these global corporations, Logitech, PepsiCo, Lloyds Bank, Nedbank, BP, Philips, they got together and said, look, we want to make a difference for society, not as greenwashing, but we want to help the United Nations achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and partner with them because our values and the values of the United Nations coincide. How can we go about doing that? So we worked to create 1,600 designers from those companies in 30 countries worldwide who have been given 5 days to be able to work, not in a hackathon, but throughout the year. All those individuals are giving much more than 5 days. The company pays them for 5, but almost everyone is giving 10, 20 days and working with development agencies by the United Nations to come up with solutions to address the Sustainable Development Goals. We run an academy, a design academy for these designers. If you're a packaging designer at Nestle, you may not know very much about systems thinking and sustainability. So we have created a school which is training. So far, 800 people have been through that school. It's called the Design for Good Academy to support them. And we had a session at 8 o'clock this morning for all of those from Asia Pacific because it's a live stream session. Let me tell you about the principles associated with Design for Good. It starts with design, but we work with development organizations who have very clear sets of briefs that they need to address. We move from there into building cross-functional teams. So there are hundreds of teams working together across these. We train and mentor those teams throughout the entire process. And it's a 1-year program to develop and 1 year for impact and the implementation. All the ideas that come from those companies, all the innovations are completely open source because that fits with our values too. When it comes to implementation, we do it with the development organizations that have been part of this right from the very outset. And let me just give you an idea of the impact just in the last year that this has been making. We've been working with the WASH Foundation and to create Project Boo, which is little flip books that come with soap and go to schools so that the children in those schools are able to learn about hand hygiene. And we know that that is already making an impact because impact is the thing that we measure continuously through this process. These little flip books, and as you flip through the book, you see a little cartoon figure showing how to go about washing by hand. You'll find a program of competitions and things that the kids can draw on. There is a program for the schools to teach more about hand hygiene prompted by this and take that knowledge home into their communities as part of that. In Ghana, we've been working with the fact that there are 2.7 billion people who don't have effective access to good toilets. So in Ghana, already 7,000 people, and this is only in the last few months, have started to use this new technology, new capabilities that have emerged through the project that we've been running with this particular community organization that's based in Ghana, but it will then take from this trial, which is in 1,800 households, serving 7,000 people, putting proper loos into communities, whether they are in refugee camps affected by natural disaster, because it's an off-grid solution. The final solution I want to just cover in this point is this taking and helping children learn about not only numeracy and literacy, but by reutilizing resources that would otherwise go to waste in their communities, turn those into things of value, showing the value of recycling and cleaning up the environment. So here you can see a tool which is for teaching maths made from tires, and 3,500 children already are being able to use these new playful tools and techniques. These are systemic solutions that are implemented into large, complex systems and stakeholder communities, but are being able to do that because we work with the development organizations on the ground. And it's also transforming the skills and competencies of all the designers who are part of that. In this kind of last couple of examples that I want to share with you before kind of closing on some of those key elements, the key learning points from this, I want to just focus on design and public policy, how that comes to be formulated, and also some of the services and regulated sectors. And this is work we've been doing with Ernst & Young, EY, and their design studio practice and the Royal College of Art together. We've been looking at what are the drivers that will enable design to have an impact in organizations? And we've come with a kind of 6-element framework. The first is that there needs to be, and often design is spread over many different disciplines, different organizations, but there has to be true leadership inside the organization. And also a capacity, which is the second one, which is about being able to operate at different levels, from human-computer interaction and UX design through to systemic challenges and policy. But to be able to do, particularly at the higher levels, one has to earn the organizational position and demonstrate the value, competencies, and the robustness of the processes. Because only by doing that can you get to point 4, which is creating transformational value. And if you do create transformational value, you're not going to retain the leadership unless you can measure and communicate that value. And that ultimately leads to building an integrative design culture. So flexibility, and I know you will all be experts in that because you're probably having to spin on a sixpence every day from everything I learned from Andrew about the environment that you're working in, particularly right now. Demonstrating the impact, well, that covers points 3 and 4. Measuring and communicating, again, it takes all of these elements. And building and nurturing a culture that is on side with this within the organization is point 6 and 1. But these are the drivers of it, and we will share with you this very valuable report to show you how the different tools and techniques can be used to achieve all 6 of those items. But what does this mean for government, and what does it mean for design now? Well, it means shifting design from being something that reports in to being something that is embedded across the organization, where the governance moves through to sit amongst the C-suite in organizations. And we learned that from Design for Good as well. In Design for Good, all the parties have a chief design officer that is part of the C-suite and works as part of the innovation board in all of those organizations. So it's about elevating it, but it can only be elevated if it has earned the right to do so, has the competencies, the compliance with the right processes, and has the coherence and capacity to communicate its measurements and its impact all the way through the business. That's how it earns that right. The final example comes from Chile. And this is some work that formed part of the PhD of one of our students who is now the senior tutor at the Royal College of Art for Service Design and is leading many major programs. And it's a nice little encapsulation that looked at issues in healthcare centers and how to use and come up with new models for service delivery that also changed policy, because the issue was, you can see the queues that are taking place, people getting up early, queuing in health centers, not getting served properly. So how can you smooth that? More health centers, more capacity, or can you manage this in better ways? And it was the latter that was focused on. The public procurement team, and this is why it's important to work across government, worked to develop 208 ideas through an external call that went out. And it wasn't just ideas from Chile, but all over the world. How can we address this challenge? Again, a prize was put on this. And so out of those 208, 20 ideas were selected that were given money to build up an MVP. And also through that, there was a synthesis. So more than just 4 winning solutions emerged who got the 50,000 to be able to implement their pilots, more than just 4 enterprises, because we created coalitions and consortia made from those different partners. And it needed people with an entrepreneurial mindset, as well as a design mindset, as well as the healthcare and delivery experience to be part of those, that collaborative, interdisciplinary model. The different ideas were then brought to a jury that included all the different functions that were part of this. And this is just one example of it. This is something that has been blocking the care and delivery right now. So this was an AI solution to prevent an area called diabetic retinopathy. It's one of the main causes of congestion. By being able to integrate a solution, a service, and a practice within the health center, just to be able to do the triaging and then rapid diagnosis outside of it, it meant that there was a huge economic saving that resulted from it, as well as a removal of work that was going through that was occupying 20% of the healthcare activity. I'll close by just talking about transforming skills. If we want to raise our aspiration of change, then we have to raise the bar in terms of the competencies and capabilities that we have. So we work closely with the Design Council on their new skills for Planet Blueprint. I'm sure many of you will have heard a lot about this already. I'm going to encourage you and will provide you with links to all of this work. We're working alongside the Design Council to make sure that people have those competencies and skills, whether it's in the areas of circularity, business model innovation, empowering communities, working with those communities as part of it, but a whole framework of skills that builds on that very familiar double diamond that you see right at the very heart of it, but with robust skills to tackle systemic challenges. So, in summary, driven by values, not only value creation, interdisciplinary with, not just for, economic sustainability as well as social and environmental sustainability. Don't forget to harness the power of tech. Think across the whole scale of macro, meso, and micro level policy instruments, of which ultimately services are just one of the instruments for doing it. But it does demand an enriched skill set that combines collaborative working with people and communities which have different skills, have the lived experience, have the community knowledge, have all of those different elements, and that is something that we must all work on. Coming out of that work with Ernst & Young and everyone else, it is earn the right to participate. And once you've earned the right to participate, earn the right to lead. And my final message is, for goodness sake, be the remedy. You know, none of us can take on that narrative of ever feeling a victim of anything if we're in the privileged positions we're in. We must be the remedy. So I'll stop there here, and hopefully we will have a few questions coming from our audience. So Zara, hopefully back to you. The sound, I didn't hear any breaks, so I assume the sound and the images all came through okay.
That was great. Thank you so much, Nick. That was, yeah, fantastic. I think we're getting a few claps from the audience and we've got a few hands also. Should we go with Hayley? Go for it in terms of questions.
Hi, Nick. So my name's Hayley Alter. I am from Magnetic, we're design and innovation consultancy. This is a fantastic talk. Thank you so much. I actually have a few questions, but I'm going to go with one that I am particularly curious about at the moment. I won't hog all the space. I was looking at the Skills for Planet. It's very, very, very interesting work. What I'm most curious about in that, so part of that field of research in terms of the skills that we need as designers, as well as the understandings that we need to have, a growing part of that research is around the notion of rebound effects. So not only what you need to know for right now, but what could be, how do we design for the potential of unintended consequences of whatever intervention we make? What work is going, has that been covered? What kind of thinking is happening around that at the moment in terms of both either RCA or in terms of the work that you're doing with Terra Carta Design for Good, also with Design Council? Where is that being touched upon?
No, it's so interesting. At 8:15 this morning, we were giving the talk in Asia Pacific region, and actually it was on very much this topic because we were talking about measurement. Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you go about measuring? And the first thing is to have a robust theory of change. And when I say robust theory of change, you know, if you say if we encourage the kids to wash their hands, you know, and give them the knowledge to take home, will those habits stick, and will it have the result that we expect? it to have, and what could there be unintended consequences that emerge from it. So one's theory of change should, wherever possible, anticipate, but we know that that's not possible necessarily to anticipate. There are unintended consequences which emerge as a result. So your measurement system has to be already embedded, not just in the time when you deliver the solution, where you're measuring the outcomes and then the ultimate impact of it, but it starts much earlier. Now, so you need your metrics, first of all, to validate your theory of change, check that you're being able to, that original set of hypotheses is valid, then to be able to look at the leading indicators to see what is happening, and then build in the lagging ones, which are to measure the ultimate impact. And that impact needs to be looked at through the lenses, which are coming back to the green design skills and also the work we're teaching in terms of environmental, social, economic, etc. So you have to start making sure that you've got the capacity to be able to understand the metrics in that. But metrics, and one of the nice things about working with the development agencies, which we do with Design for Good, they have a set of metrics which they have to respond to their funders and supporters and sponsors for. But those are not always as complete as they ought to be. And that's why it comes to values. How do you, through your value set, start saying, I must extend that view to be a true 360 view of the impact that we're making? And, you know, the world is full of unintended consequences to systemic actions, which have not necessarily, you know, we're going to put 4 hours on A&E as a wait time. Well, there are lots of ways of gaming the system. So it needs people like you, Hayley, with the imagination to imagine. You know, as designers, we're quite good at this as being subversives. How might people game the system? You know, there's a rogue inside each one of us. That's why we became designers. You know?
I don't know what you're suggesting.
But I think you get it.
It's true.
So
Yeah, no,
think
absolutely.
about those, and then, you know, we've got to monitor everything. I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg never intended some of the consequences of his actions, and there are checks and balances. I'm not sure that the $1 trillion being offered and the measurements to Elon Musk about the measures he will need to achieve, or the metrics he has to achieve, necessarily look at the consequences. As designers, and I would say, coming back to being values driven, we must look more broadly than just the simple metrics that are easy to communicate, but then have consequences which are so adverse.
That is an amazing response. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Hayley, and thanks, Nick. Are there any questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat or come off mute and share.
Hayley, you might have time for a second question.
Hi, Nick, thank you so much for the talk. Could I ask a bit more about how to articulate values? Because I found this a little bit tricky with some people sometimes, the kind of assumption that we all have the same values, or we kind of know the difference between, you know, values and values driven. So could you speak a bit more about that?
No, I think this is a really important point. I don't think it's right to assume everyone shares the same values, but we just argue about different ways of achieving those values. We also have to understand what would people prioritize, and that's where values come in, because or the discussion really gets important. You know, if you value, let's take the freedom of speech debate that we've got right now. How do you equate freedom of speech, you know, with individual freedoms and the freedom to feel I'm not being harassed? I'm not, you know, where do the limits lie in these? So I think it's very important to take a view, which is the following. The first is people do not share the same priorities in terms of values. And some of those values that we have to be traded. And it's important to have a discussion with people about that. And the second thing is to understand that your values are your values. You cannot expect other people's values to be the same. And I think in society, as we talk about a kind of multicultural society, we have to accept that we do not necessarily all share the same values, and that empathy and respect is to respect other people's values as well. And the polarization that we're seeing in society, and I'm moving a little bit off, the topic of today, but it's right that because I don't want to get into the political sphere too far. But a lot of the issues that are emerging in terms of polarization means that you have constituencies where you simply cannot offer a solution that will meet both of their needs as part of it, and therefore you have to make certain choices within that. And I'm not a moral philosopher. I'm a designer, but I do know that, and I'm this, again, I'm in my 70s, so it just means it's easier to kind of look back on life. I can recognize as well, with all humility, that half the decisions I've made in my life were wrong, and the other half were suboptimal. So being humble enough to recognize and to engage with communities and recognize that your answers may not be the right ones, but somehow to reconcile between societies. So it's not resignation that they're different, or we can't work with those people. It's a kind of reconciliation that is required as part of it. So forgive, I mentioned at the beginning, I feel I look very ecclesiastical today, almost with the dog collar in this in this setting. But again, it's an area, but stick to your values. But be very, very understanding of others.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Layla, for your question. I think we have Laura up next.
Hi there, Nick. Yeah, thank you for this. It's been really, really lovely. I was doing a similar talk myself this morning, so seeing it now at this scale, I'm like, oh, wow, this is fab. So what you just said there about that choice, what about, like, we're talking here about designing interventions, and we've sort of already got an idea of what we're doing, but what about designing interventions that enable those communities to make those choices, surfacing these tensions and therefore what they want to do about it and giving them the power to do it? Because I often think if I can design like games for my local community that get them to, play out some of these absurd choices in the way the system works, they can think, oh, actually, why are we doing that? Like, why don't we do something different? So have you had any experience of designing things to tackle that angle in?
Look, there is a whole program that the Royal College of Art called Ecological Citizenship, and I might suggest to Andrew and Zara to bring in one of my colleagues on this. And it's recognizing the power of community and the power of communities and empowering them and giving them the tools and the techniques. And in your case, you're using games as part of it to facilitate them to be able to come up with solutions which are able to address their problems without needing some kind of external process of curation, but just perhaps some light facilitation. Now, I'm always stressing to my designers, because when I graduated from the Royal College of Art in the 70s, I wanted to be a kind of star designer that just made beautiful things, like kind of Philip Stark, that was kind of like, it's where we kind of were in those days. Today, I try and tell my designers that we're training, it's about humility. You've got to think of yourself perhaps as a midwife to other people's ideas. You've got to think of yourself in the role of social worker to enabling and helping communities achieve their goals. Do not try and, they're not there to help co-create something that fulfills your goals. So working at all of these different levels, there is top-down required, and I can just imagine the kind of Rachel Reeves needs a bit of space to come up with some top-down stuff. But at another level, in the local community, you need to come up with some of that bottom-up stuff, and it's they who need that. So what kind of facilitation can you do? You can provide the games, you can provide the data, you can provide resources that will enable them to come up with informed choices. You can help them through techniques that we've become, as a design community, I don't mean at the RCA particularly, but just we of co-creation, and to come up with it and then give them, let's call it this way. I often talk about metrics being around engagement. First of all, people have to be engaged. So how are we measuring what our degree of engagement is? Engage people that they want to make change means you then have to do enabling actions, which can include games, but it can be facilitation, it can be data, it can be sources of inspiration. Let's take ideas from elsewhere. How would we do that? Is that a source of inspiration for this? That sense of humility that whatever you come up with first is probably going to be wrong. As I say, the reason we iterate is we're really good at managing failure. We call it design and learning. We learn through design, but it is that iterative process. So those are all elements that I think I would encourage you to do. One of the best examples of this is some work by Judah Armani, and he's been working with the Ministry of Justice in this space. So it's Armani. He is no relation, as you'll realize when you meet Judah. And he has a very unique style sense as well. Andrew, I'll send you some links to Judah's work that he provided me in the run-up to this session as well. He did a lot of work in the prison service and created a record label called In-House Records. But now In-House is now dealing with sport. It's dealing with fashion. It's dealing with, and it's being created by the people in the prison population. It's being developed by people on probation for it. It is empowering them to use their competencies, their creativity, their skills, and getting a sense of ownership of this and empowerment to make change. So again, there's a huge role for the designer to shine a light on an issue which might not be well understood. Shining a light is a great thing we do as designers as part of it. Create those kind of, don't try and facilitate everything, but just be the enabler as part of it, and bring in other enablers, and using all your tools, techniques, Laura, and I think you'll produce some brilliant results. But go and look up what Judah's doing. He seems to be kind of state of the art in this for me right now.
Thank you, Nick. I love that you brought in humility there as well. So yeah, no, thank you very much. Very empowering.
Well, yeah, if over the years you screw up so much, but still you've not done too much harm, that's the place to be.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I think we have time for one more question, and Hallie's got the hand up.
Hi, thank you so much, Nick. That was absolutely inspirational. My question is, do you think innovation is often defined too narrowly? So we kind of like talk about all those tech solutions, fast, iteration, disruption, but actually probably, kind of sometimes, especially I'm working with grassroots community groups and food, but it's actually about slower processes and collective ownership. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Look, I kind of grew up in the tech sector, and I saw so much bloody hype, and I better own up as well. I was director of marketing for IBM Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I was right. I was the hype master in this. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is my redemption now, as part of it. So we got the great AI bubble right now, and it will be an economic bubble. Clearly, there'll be $1 trillion of market cap in smaller startup companies, which is probably going to evaporate, altogether. We might find Nvidia and others are somewhat overpriced right now, like Microsoft and others, so overvalued and a bit overhyped. But it's very real, and it's going. And as designers, we can probably help find some of the best use cases for it, because it's going to be very use case based, and for companies to be able to embrace this. So the value and the impact is yet to come. There will be a shake-up, but it's going to be a revolution for us that we have to address. But it is not going to be driven by the tech. It's going to be driven by smart companies who understand how to exploit and leverage that and create value. What we've got to do is help organizations. And there's a lovely expression that I heard, decades and decades ago. And it was from some long in the tooth business guy who said to me, find out how your customer creates value for their customers, and then help them not only create value, but capture more value. Because if you do that, and now let's turn it from customer to community as part of it. You know, how can I help my community create more value for its members? And how can I help it capture that value in whatever form that is going to take, so that it becomes not just something that is self-sustaining, but something that is thriving and prospering as part of it. So, Hannah, I hope, and I think you and I have met before at the Submission Black Awards, and congratulations on receiving that award as well. And I know that's exactly how you work, which is why I wanted to come back to this, and I love the backdrop. So
Thank you very much. And I am actually talking about my journey since winning that award next week. So if you are at the award ceremony, it will be lovely to see you, and I will be happy to share all the adventures and, you know, kind of food. But thank you so much for starting me off on the positive when I met you a year ago,
Yes.
and giving me ideas. Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled for you and thrilled for the progress you're making, and it's perhaps a fitting way to, as our last question today. But it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you all today. Do come and see us at the Royal College of Art. We no doubt will play some role in the new School of Design for Government, and we would be eager to be able to do that. I have 600 students about to start our new grand challenge, Andrew, and I better brief you all on that, and Zara and everyone else. And we'll certainly be excited about inviting you all around. And so through Zara and Andrew, we'll publicize that to see the outcomes of this. So I'll pass back to Zara and to Andrew. My thanks. It's been a privilege to talk to you today.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give one more round of applause for Nick for taking the time to come to speak to our community. And as Andy mentioned, we'll be sending out the slides and the recording in next month's edition, so sign up to the newsletter. Andy's also been posting a bit of links in the chat. So yeah, again, huge thanks to Nick, and we'll wrap up. So thank you so much, Nick.
My pleasure.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone joining. Bye.